we missed a graphic here, but if you turn to, I think it's page 15 of your prayer book, you'll find the calendar for the church year, in which there are 7 major feasts listed, which it says are more important, there we are, more important than any Sunday feast. And one of them is All Saints' Day on the 1st of November. We've also got, maybe on the next slide, right, here we go. This is taken, this November 1 and 2 here is taken from a few pages later in the prayer book, where it lays out the calendar for each month. And you see that the 1st of November is called All Saints, and the 2nd, traditionally called the Commemoration of All Faithful Departed. Back in the ancient history of the church, at least the Western church, saw itself as mediating between people and God, and it did a lot of judging of sheep and goats and who was in and who was out and so forth. And so it was very careful to say that the 1st of November would commemorate all saints, that is, people who had died and whose sainthood had been recognized by the church. And of course, all of us want to pray for all the people we love and see no longer, and we are concerned about all death around us. And so there came to be a separate ceremony the next day for praying for people who were not necessarily saints of the church. It was called All Faithful Departed because you were only supposed to pray for those who had been faithful, which also puts you in the position of judging people's faith, which we also don't want to do. So we now call the 2nd of November All Souls Day, and it's an opportunity to pray for all the dead and not put yourself in the place of having to judge anybody. Anyway, because in the Episcopal Church our 3 pillars are scripture, tradition, and reason, we do hew to tradition, and we do say we have an All Saints Day and an All Souls Day, but in fact, they're commonly rolled together, and it's the tradition at St. John's that we observe them both on the Sunday following the 1st of November. And you get a sense that it's both because you sing those hymns about the saints, but we also read the necrology, the names of all the people in the parish who've died in the last year. And so we remember everybody on that day, as well as singing about sainthood. Do you want to add anything to that? That sounds pretty complete. All right. So what's on our next slide? Right. So the other thing you know is that in the Abrahamic religions, that is Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, and in also some other Eastern religions, holidays actually begin at sundown the evening before the holiday starts. And this is still true today. And in the very, very strictly observant people will actually wait for somebody in Jerusalem or Mecca to see that the moon has come up, or to see the sliver of a new moon, and so on. Anyway, the nighttime start of the next day is an important tradition. And so the eve of All Saints was an important question, and that is All Hallows in Old English. Some of you still say, hallowed be thy name, and of course that means may your name be blessed or sainted or holy. So the All Hallows is the Old English for All Saints, and All Hallows Eve is the evening before the 1st of November. And when you contract that in popular speech, it becomes Halloween, and Halloween is then the 31st of November. So that's how we got there. I think Julie's going to tell us more about Day of the Dead, but my understanding is that's more connected to praying for all the dead, which is the November 2 All Souls thing. So Day of the Dead is not Halloween. But anyway, we're trying to draw those pictures. I'll leave that to you. That's your story. So do we have anything else on the next? Right. So I said that. So at St. John's, we observe both All Saints and All Souls on the following Sunday. What do we have next? Oh, right. So, Anne, maybe you'll want to talk about this a little bit, but this last year, well, let me back up. We had a tradition before the pandemic that in certain seasons, we would have evening services, Wednesday evenings in our chapel. And we brought back one such evening service a year ago when the Wednesday fell on November 2, All Souls Day, and we had a candlelit service. Actually, it was in this room, and we walked the labyrinth, and we said Compline, and we remembered people who had died who were dear to us. And that was kind of popular, and people asked to have it brought back. We're sticking with the Wednesday tradition, and this Wednesday, which falls on November 1st, we will be again having an observance for All Saints and All Souls and for everybody who's died in the chapel. And Anne and I are going to lead that, and it's going to have some opportunities for meditation and then Compline. And
yeah,
tell us about more if you want.
Yeah. Okay. You know, as you may have seen from the article in Crossroads, and I think a shorter version of that appeared elsewhere. You know, can you hear me? Oops, sorry.
Just keep it close to it.
Yes. Okay, better?
Only picks up from the top.
Got it.
Literally.
Okay, all right, great. Can you all hear me now? Okay, all right. As I think Walter already said, we're rolling All Saints and All Souls together on Wednesday night. And, you know, this is probably a particularly good time for us to be gathering to pray for people who have died, because there's so much warfare and strife going on around the world. But come and join us. We'll start out with the time of meditation. I won't describe that to you. I think you'll come and find out what we have in mind for that. But after about half an hour, we will then go on to the service of Compline, which probably many of you have done in other contexts. I know often that will, at the end of a retreat or a conference or, you know, some day-long gathering, Compline is a nice way to wrap it up. So if you're not familiar with Compline, you can take a look at the service in your prayer book, and then please come and join us on Wednesday night at 7:30 in St. Mary's Chapel.
Right, thanks. It'll be an opportunity to be quiet and contemplative, whereas I expect next Sunday will be full of bright music and that sort of thing. Do we have anything else? Let me ask, should we skip this in the interest of time or something, or just, I don't know how we're doing. I'll tell you what this was last week, and this is not a video from last week. This is something I found on YouTube, but last week, the Cathedral Choral Society at Washington National Cathedral did a really interesting program. All the music they performed was music that was composed in the Roman Catholic Cathedral in Mexico City in the Baroque period. The conquistadors came over and took over Tenochtitlan and built a Roman Catholic cathedral on top of the Aztec temple. Colossal act of imperialism, very symbolic. And then, of course, they brought over European trained musicians to teach the native people to play European instruments and sing in European style, European church music. But it didn't take very long before native influences got in there. And already by the Baroque period, you could hear that this music composed in Mexico was not quite what it would have sounded like if it had been composed in Europe. And a lot of this music's been discovered in the last few years, and so there was a whole concert dedicated to it. And one of the really interesting pieces, it's, as far as we know, the only time musicians ever set this text to music. There's a verse from the book of Job about being terrified by the nightmares that come at night and rattle your bones. And in Latin and set in this music, it's really glorious. And so I had a performance of it here, but it's not the one we did last week. But anyway, I thought rattling bones and being terrified went with Halloween, but it doesn't go with Dia de los Muertos. So I think what you have, Julie, may be more interesting. I don't know, unless people want to hear, you want to hear a snippet of this, and then just, yeah, okay, play a short minute of it, and then I think we should turn it over to you and all the fun stuff. Singing In Aurore Visionis Noctis, in the horror of the night visions, or the horrible night visions. Right, this is not the Cathedral Choral Society. This is a small ensemble doing this. They're just one person on a part. There's 6 voices singing, 6 vocal lines. There are 2 sopranos, 2 altos, tenor, and bass. That's a good place to stop at that cadence. That was In Aurore Visionis Nocturnae, right? In the horrible night visions. Anyway, if you're into this stuff, it's interesting. Yeah. You may have to be a little bit of a classical music geek to hear how this is different from continental music of the same time, but whatever. It's if you may just think this is something to add to your Halloween playlist. I don't know. Anyway, why don't you tell us all about the fun stuff?
Yeah.
Are you fired up? Or...
Can you guys hear me? Great. Okay.
The people online will not hear you.
I'm mic'd on the. Yeah. Can you hear? But if you can't hear me, I can switch. Do you think the mic is better? Okay. Great. Well, hi everyone. I'm Julie Inlow. My husband Leo Munoz is back in the kitchen making chocolate to dip your pan de muerto in. So it is through him and his family, they're Mexican American, that I came to know, and also living in a place in the United States where Dia de los Muertos is acknowledged and celebrated, which was when we lived in Austin, Texas for about 6 years. Let's see. So grateful I found my reading glasses up here on the podium. So, you want to move forward, Chris? Just a second. So one thing, my hope is today that if you're not familiar with the holiday Day of the Dead or Dia de los Muertos, and I know some of you in the audience here are experts, like the family, Marcella and Peter and Nate back here, have been to Mexico and seen the holiday, during Dia de los Muertos. One thing I think that tends to happen in the United States is we take holidays and we make them really fun, but sometimes they're not tethered at all to reality. Cinco de Mayo, for example, is an insignificant holiday in Mexico. It's relevant to a battle that happened in the state of Puebla. It's not the Independence Day. That's September 16th, the 8th States. That's an enormous, not religious holiday. But Cinco de Mayo was a battle where a group of underdogs beat the French. So, and it's not significantly celebrated. But Dia de los Muertos is a holiday that, though, there's a lot of stuff that you see here in the United States that's super festive. Like I have some, like there are Barbie dolls now, and it's, fun and cool. But it really does have a deep spiritual and sacred, that actually should say sacred, not scared. It was about 11 when I was doing it. But there is a deep sacred element to this. I mean, it's become fun and commercialized, and it's celebrated differently in different states in Mexico and throughout the Mexican diaspora. But at its core, it is a holiday focused, like National Geographic says, it's like a family reunion, except dead ancestors are the guests of honor. And it's a holiday where people welcome back the souls of their deceased loved ones. It's usually around December 1st and 2nd, or November 1st and 2nd, but that can be expanded depending on what state in Mexico you're celebrating in. Sometimes they celebrate children on one day and adults on another day. But here in the US, we do 1st and 2nd of November. Let's see. So what it is not, it is meaningful. It is often joyful and celebratory. I'll talk a little bit later about a parade that happens in Austin. I think it just celebrated its 40th anniversary, focused on Dia de los Muertos. And you wouldn't come away saying, wow, this was a sacred, special experience. You would come away saying, this was so much fun. I feel like I was in Oaxaca, but I'm in Austin, But it's really a wonderful holiday. It's not scary. There are a lot of skeletons and bones, and I'll talk about that later, but it isn't intended to elicit fear. It's really rooted in pre-Columbian Mesoamerican traditions that focus on the duality of life and death and the circle of life and death. And it wasn't something to be feared or scared of. So as distinct from like the music that you listen to, it's not about that at all. It's not focused on zombies or the Walking Dead. I mean, there's really cute stuff that you can find at Target now, but at its core, there are some. It's rooted in nature, the duality of life and death. It is not depressing or somber. It's been cathartic for me as a non-Mexican to learn more about this holiday. And I have a picture of my mom up here on the ofrenda, and she passed before my girls were born. And it's, you know, you have the anniversaries of someone who has passed or the birthday, and those become kind of sad days too. But this is festive, and I can put things on the altar like paintbrushes that relate to my mom, you know. It's been a neat way to interact with her spirit and with my girls. So if you want to scoot forward. Oh yeah, it's not Halloween, but there is sugar. So sorry. So like I was saying, this is deeply rooted initially in, you know, the people who were here first on the continent, and the Nahua and Uto Aztecans. These ceremonies were traditionally in August, the ceremonies honoring their deceased beloved. When the Spanish arrived, I was trying to think of what terms we use, like conquistador, they took over, you know, but I'll refrain from going there right now. So when they arrived, the traditions morphed. I won't say evolved, but they morphed. And you know, including the timing of the ceremonies, which were then brought to align with All Saints and All Souls, so more the European and Spanish traditions. So as I say there, you know, it now blends the indigenous and not imposed, but like Spanish European traditions, and also new twists. And by new, I mean like in the last 125 years, you have, you may be familiar if you've seen the movie Coco, or there are these spirit animals, which are these anthropomorphized multiple animals combined, and they serve as your spirit guide. And those are relatively new. Those are 20th century, early 20th century. And then the Calavera Catrina, you might recognize, I don't know if you can see it, her, like specifically. And this was actually like part of like the person, the lithographer who did this. It was more like social commentary. He was trying to dress someone in an elite outfit and kind of make fun of her poshness. But then Diego Rivera got a hold of it. He created a whole body. He put it in his famous paintings and murals. So she symbolizes now in modern day a lot of she symbolizes Dia de los Muertos. Okay, if you want to scoot forward. So just for the sake of time, I'll scoot through some of these, but I've talked about the alebrije, the spirit animal, the altar ofrenda. So ofrenda is offering, but it when you talk about the ofrenda, which Rob and I and Marcela and others contributed to yesterday, built, it is, you use the word ofrenda, offering, to refer to the altar. So that's a term you'll hear commonly. Let's see, hang on one sec. I gotta switch to my other notes here. So the calavera is a skull, but one tradition that you've probably seen are sugar skulls. They're skulls, but they're made of sugar and they're edible. So that's why I said there is sugar, though it's not Halloween. And that's another traditional thing you'll find frequently on the altar. The main purpose of the altar or the ofrenda is to build it in a way that will attract the spirits of your deceased beloved, you know, your deceased family and friends. And so all of these things, like the marigolds, actually, do you know how to say it in Nahuatl, Marcela, by any chance? Okay, I won't attempt it, but most people don't call them marigolds. They refer to the indigenous the term in the indigenous language, which is Nahuatl, to refer to those. But the color and the scent is supposed to bring your relatives back, and the shape of the pan de muerto, which is the bread of the dead, but is really good, and it has like an orangey lemon taste inside. The circle represents according to some, the circle of life. This is either across the top, the bones of the deceased, or across, kind of depends who you ask and who's celebrating. But the sweetness of the bread is supposed to nourish your beloved and attract them to your altar. So traditionally, these, a lot of altars were built at cemeteries, at the gravesite, and that's why it is sacred and spiritual, but not sad, not somber. But now there are altars everywhere, and I'll show you a few good ones, including some that Marcella and Peter took pictures of. Let's see. Merci. Oh, merci. Speak French. Muchísimas gracias. No, that's great. So that's the word in Nahuatl. And let's see. So yeah, these are pictures of the ofrenda. And then these are the alebrijes. I don't know if you can see them, the sugar skulls. The calacas is I think it's a slang Spanish word, but it's to represent the other dressed up skeletons. And then here's our famous La Catrina. So I have more symbols on the next page. So monarcas, or monarch butterflies, and Chris can talk a lot about this. He was just sharing some beautiful stories, are another symbol. They're thought to guide the spirit, another important symbol. They also are, as you know, the migratory route of the monarch butterfly ends just outside of Mexico City. So there are a lot of monarchs. Pan de Muerto, we've talked about. Copal is a tree, and it's the tree that is usually, is the wood that usually makes the alebrije. And the scent of burning copal is often found on the altars. We tried to find some copal, and there was disagreement whether the scent we found was copal or something altogether not. So we decided not to put it on the altar. And then, Chris, I always call them xolos because I can't say the Nahuatl. Okay, so we're so lucky in our community to have some xolo escuinte, Mexican hairless dogs. And Chris has these dogs at home. And these are the dogs that, let's see, I can't remember the name of the river. Give me a second. But these dogs had a really important role to indigenous Mexicans in moving their deceased across the river, guiding the deceased across the river to the afterlife, the underworld, but the afterlife. And so when we were playing the movie Coco on Friday, Chris brought his dogs. And if you've seen Coco and seen the movie and seen the dog Dante, his dogs have the same floppy gait and their tongues hang out. It's just amazing how they really got the details right in that movie. If you want to skip forward. Oh, papel picado. That's what's above you right now. It means punched paper. So that's not specific to Dia de los Muertos, but you're always going to find that on altars. And yeah, Rob and I are really happy that it stayed up. Okay, if you want to scoot forward. So you can just move forward. How is it celebrated in Mexico? If you want to just, there. So these are pictures of altars that are mostly from Marcella and Peter, who are back here. You want to raise your hands? Who were in Mexico City and graciously shared these so that there was no copyright issue. You'll find a few things that I have not put citations for, but I will fill in that later. So, but depending on where you are in Mexico, altars are built differently. So our altar has levels, and often there are 3 levels to represent the underworld, the earth, and above. But you can have a 7-tiered altar. In other parts of Mexico, they're made with flowers and sand, and they're built on the ground. And then I was reading, I forget where, actually it comes up later. There's another spot in Mexico that builds it really high up, like shoulder height. And I forget exactly why, but like people have, really taken the traditions and evolved them depending on where they are. There's one particularly sacred and special place. It's on a lake, an island on a lake. And this is what their altar and the graveyard looks like. If you want to click on that for a second, see where that goes. Oh, this is paid for content for National Geographic, but And I can share these slides later, but if you just scroll down, you can kind of see the different things that people do in different states. Like in Mexico City, they've recently started this ginormous parade, which I like to think was started. I mean, Austin is celebrating its 40th right now. So, but this is a newer tradition in Mexico City, but it's big. They also have a parade with giant alebrijes, which is really cool. There's the Pan de Muerto. You can just keep scrolling. There are like 12 states it covers. Michoacan. Feel free to, thanks. This is another ofrenda. I forget what state this was built in, but like that's a lot of work if you're using leaves and sand. Guanajuato, out the northwest of Mexico City. Rob, that's what we needed. We were like, where do we find marigolds around here? That's cool. You can keep. Yeah, and this is what the parade looked like. Aguascalientes. I don't know. That's a good question. It's a relatively new parade, the one in Mexico City. It started in 2016. So it's, no, I mean, the holidays around Easter and Christmas are still really significant religious holidays. But this, I would say, and I mean, I'm not a theologian or an historian, so, but I think that this is probably, and there are religious roots to it, but I would say that Christmas, Easter, and this are, you know, oh, and 16, the Mexican Independence Day that we talked about. And you can just scoot down to the end here. I know I want people to be able to eat and stuff. Oh, I think, well, yeah, keep going. Yucatan, the Yucatan, if you've never been, or if you've never been off the part of the Yucatan where Cancun and Tulum are, if you go to the other side, the real Yucatan, like the cities of Merida, you'll find the most interesting food, and you'll hear, you know, 30% of people who live on the Yucatan can trace their Mayan roots. I mean, some people don't speak Spanish generally, they speak indigenous languages. It's really interesting down in Oaxaca and Juarez and even in the Yucatan to hear that. And then the food is amazing. It's, you know, it's Lebanese, Spanish, and indigenous Mexican combined into my daughter Amelia's favorite dish, cochinita pibil. And yeah, I think we can probably exit this. I don't want to, I can share these later. Okay, so these are ofrendas in Mexico, and now we'll move to beyond Mexico, the Mexican diaspora. So one of my favorite altars is, or ofrenda, is in a bakery called Mi Tierra in San Antonio. And they put pictures of significant community leaders and social activists. And poor Leo is still back in the kitchen, but he used to be the chief of staff for a member of Congress who was the son of the second Hispanic member of Congress. His name was Henry B. Gonzalez. And he if you don't know about him, he just made a huge difference. He was the first Latino to run a major committee on Capitol Hill. And so I think that's Henry B. right there, Gonzalez. And it's really, really beautiful to see. And then this is the parade that we used to be involved with. And that's actually my daughter, Amelia, right there over in, like, you want to raise your hand? Yeah. Yeah, if you want to play this, I think this is a fun video.
There's one simple hearing hack anyone can use to improve their hearing almost overnight.
I had high
Did
hopes
you know
that the ads on YouTube would be like, that's the Consul General from Mexico. That was me. And it's only got bigger.
¡Viva Posada, Rivera! ¡Los creadores! ¡Mira!
They have a pre-Columbian section, a Mexico Lindo. All right. Nice for the sake of time, but I'll send these out. It gives you a good sense of what downtown Austin looks like. Well, yesterday. There, thanks. There we go. So if you don't mind just moving on to the next slide. So there's a great, there's a new museum that's being built, the Museum of the American Latino, as part of the Smithsonian. They have some amazing resources. They're small right now. It's in a wing of the American History Museum, but it's definitely worth a visit. So there's a wealth of resources about this holiday on their website. There's another really amazing group that, oh, yay, my husband, Leo Munoz, back there in the Guayabera. He's on the board of this incredible organization called the Lanzano Long Institute for Latin American Studies at UT Austin. I think it's one of the largest Latin American Studies institutes. It is unbelievable, the resources they have. And so they gave us a lot of great resources, but they were in Spanish. So I figured, you know. So these are ofrendas in homes right here in Chevy Chase. Most of them are our house. And then one is our friend's house. So I was recently, on Friday after the movie Coco played, Leo and I went to a party of parents of like the rowing team at BCC because our daughter's been rowing. I did not expect to walk in and see papel picado. Then we were shown their altar, and the dad who built the altar, his mom was from Argentina, but his dad is Hungarian and recently passed. And he found it so cathartic to build this altar, which included this beautiful obituary frame to his dad. It was not what I expected at the crew parent party at all here in Chevy Chase. It felt great. You can scoot forward. Oh, these are just, I have some clips here, but I'll send them out so we can have some fun eating and drinking the hot chocolate that Leo made, the chocolate. But these are two, I mean, they're English language movies, but they're intended to teach people about what the holiday is truly about. And they're really beautiful. One got less publicity, I think, The Book of Life, but it's really, really beautiful. Want to move on from there. And then, oh, at St. John's Norwood, what do we do? Beyond Mexico, the Mexican diaspora here and others and friends. So I think I already mentioned that Chris brought his dogs in, but that's what they look like. And can you tell me their name?
That is Toshli.
Toshli?
Rabbit.
Rabbit. What? Snake. Okay. And is this Toshli? Yes. Toshli is like a rabbit. So yeah, it was really fun to have them running around as the dogs were up on the screen in the movie. So, and with that, I invite you to enjoy some pan de muerto in the back room or back of the room. Check out the altar. Enjoy the chocolate, and yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julie. Yeah, please. I've got two seconds, and then I want you to have fun. I got paper flower making over here. You can make paper marigolds. There's the pan de muerto and the hot chocolate in the back. If you'd like to have your face painted, you can see some of the kids already had their face painted upstairs, and they've come down to join us. And so you can see the handiwork here. Paul is doing the faces over there, and we'll be happy to do yours. This is not, Bloomingdale's makeup counter. So I want to thank Julie very much, and Leo for all of their work, and their daughters, Maribel and Amelia and Marin. And then I also wanted to thank Maribel Zamora, who's over there with her husband and their son Nate. Is that correct? And they're good, and they're helping with the paper flower making. Great. I want to thank Dawn for all her help with helping to put this together with the kids and introducing me to the Munoz. we hope to make this an annual tradition, and you can bring your photos next year and put them on the ofrende, as you see lots of all of my families over there. It's really a wonderful cathartic thing. And I also want to thank the Altar Guild for getting all the fresh marigolds that you see around here today. So have fun, everybody. Come on.